Welcome, everyone, to Coffee with a Codex. My name is Dot Porter, and I am a curator in the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies. Once a week, I take a book off the shelf and show it to you in this program. It's 30 minutes, quite informal, show and tell. Today, we are very lucky, and I am very pleased to have with us my colleague Nick Herman, Dr. Nicholas Herman. Nick he is the Lawrence J. Schoenberg Curator of Manuscripts in the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies. And he recently purchased this book for our collection, and it is a little book of hours, and it's gorgeous. And he is going to tell you all about it. So without further ado, I am going to mute myself, and Nick will start talking.
Thank you, Dot. It's nice to be back on Coffee with the Codex. It's been a little while. Always a pleasure. I'm going to jump right in. All right. So, as Dot mentioned, we have a book of hours here, a new acquisition at Penn Libraries at the Kislak Center. And the reason we acquired it is because, unlike some other libraries in the region and in Europe, we actually have a fairly small collection of books of hours here at Penn, but they're very frequently requested for classroom use because, of course, books of hours are fascinating from many different points of view for people studying the Middle Ages and in many different courses in history, in art history, in religion, in modern languages, in classics. There's a lot of interest in books of hours because they encapsulate a lot of really interesting social, historical developments of the later Middle Ages. So we have been trying to acquire a few more in our collection to be able to show some more representative examples, and also, frankly, to spread out our use of manuscripts, because I think you've seen on Coffee with the Codex previously, MS Codex 1056, which is our sort of other prototypical book of hours. It's a French book of hours from Normandy, from Rouen, from about 1475. This book of hours is from approximately the same period, but it is Netherlandish or Flemish, probably made in Bruges around 1470. And so it provides a nice counterpoint to MS Codex 1056 and has some features that are specific to Netherlandish books of hours, or at least encountered more frequently in Netherlandish books of hours. As you can see, it's a pretty compact volume. It has what seems to be an 18th century binding, Preces PIs, so holy prayers, Codex in Membranis, so presumably part of a rebound as part of an aristocratic library in the 18th century in this nice sort of, neoclassical gilt tooled and stamped binding. And we have some marbled end papers, again, very typical of probably late 18th century rebinding. We have some evidence here beyond our own brand new shelf mark, MS Codex 2324. We have some probably 20th century pencil markings, 144 leaves, 6 large miniatures, 16 small ones, 22 miniatures in total. And then up here we have a little 15th century written. So some evidence of, yeah, you can see a little bit here, these pencil markings. So we have this fly leaf that is attached to the paste down. And then we jump right in with the rest of the book of hours. And so like most books of hours, it begins with a calendar. This one is unillustrated, and it's a fairly sparse calendar, but it does have some feasts that are associated with particular regions. Probably the most distinctive one for Bruges, Saint Donation on the 14th of October. And the Church of Saint Donation in Bruges is one of the city's principal churches. and I think he was an early bishop there. So for October 14th, here we have donation Archbishop. But as I mentioned, no illustrations. MS Codex 1056 or other, as I said before, prototypical Book of Hours has vignettes and a more fully decorated calendar, vignettes with the labors of the months and other images associated with each month. Now, one of the things that's sort of interesting and quite typical of Flemish books of hours is that the miniatures, the full page miniatures, are often tipped in to the book block on singletons, and this is the case here. So normally, I should say, in a French book of hours, one would encounter here usually the gospel readings, and they often open with an image of John on Patmos or of the four evangelists. Sometimes you have a reading just from the Passion according to John at this point. But here we have a blank or a reverse side of a full page miniature, which opens on the verso side onto the first recto of text after the calendar. And this book, which is complete, has 6 full page miniatures, and they're all like this. So this is a singleton. It's a slightly thicker piece of parchment, so it's not conjoined to anything else. And this was simply the habit in Netherlandish book illumination for books of hours in particular, because there was a very vibrant industry of miniaturists or groups of miniaturists, guilds sometimes, who decorated these or painted these miniatures separately. Now, in many Netherlandish books of hours, you have these tipped in singleton miniatures that have a totally different border decoration and often different size margin and different justification, showing you that they were really purchased separately and combined into the book. That was very typical in the Netherlands and not typical in France, where the miniatures tend to be integrated into folios that are integrated into the text block. What we have here is a singleton, but you can tell the border decoration is very, very similar. It's not like totally identical, but it's certainly from the same kind of workshop, because you've got these very tiny, they're going to be hard to see even fully zoomed in, but you've got these tiny little white dots. I don't know if you can see them, but along the kind of ridges of does that work? Refocus. And you'll have to maybe wait until we get the digitized images. But you can see that in between these two, there's really only very slight differences. Like there are these sort of blueberries or berries here that are not found on the facing side, but they do really match. They're certainly made by the same kind of workshop, even though this crucifixion miniature is on a single sheet of parchment that is tipped in. And the other thing that's distinctive here is that we, as I said, we don't begin with the gospel readings or with Passion according to John. We begin here with the hours of the cross, and then we follow on with the hours of the Holy Spirit, right? So these are these shorter hours that are frequently found in many books of hours, but here they come at the beginning of the volume, which again is somewhat more typical of Netherlandish books of hours, and they're not intercalated. In French books of hours, these 2 suites of hours are often found intercalated, so mixed in with the hours of the Virgin, so that you have you recite your reading for matins for the hours of the Virgin, and then you at the same time can just directly continue and recite matins for the hours of the cross and matins for the hours of the Holy Spirit. But here we have these hours, these sort of accessory hours coming at the very beginning of the volume. And so for the hours of the cross, you've got the crucifixion. And the style of these miniatures is very typical of Netherlandish style. It's very detailed. You have these receding landscapes. You have a very minute attention to detail and to sort of observation of the natural world. And we'll see that in a few more miniatures as well. So this is the hours of the cross. And then we turn, and again, the next section again has one of these tipped in miniatures. And here, this piece of parchment is really much thicker than the corresponding first page of text. And here we have Pentecost. So this is the typical iconography for the hours of the Holy Spirit. It shows the descent of the Holy Spirit with the little flames of gold. You can't quite see them, but they're there. I'll zoom in a little bit. So the apostles gathered and with the Virgin Mary. And so this scene marks the beginning of the hours of the Holy Spirit. And these are shorter hours, right? They're sort of abbreviated. They're not as long as the hours of the Virgin, which comes later. Now, this book of hours is interesting because it mixes those full-page miniatures with about 15 inset historiated initials that are painted by a different painter, one who is sort of a little bit less trendy, less in touch with the large-scale painting of artists like Hans Memling and Gerhard David, who are painting in and around Bruges in this period in the 1470s, 1480s. So that tells us right away that there's a different miniaturist painting these historiated initials versus the kind of more specialist one who's called upon to do the 6 full-page miniatures. And so here, after the hours of the cross, after the calendar, hours of the cross, hours of the Holy Spirit, we have a section that is also somewhat distinctive. And this is the Mass of the Virgin. So this is a short section. It's about 10 folios that includes a kind of very basic Mass as opposed to the offices, which could be recited on one's own. The Mass, right, this is to be recited in church. It includes the confession here. You can see the rubric and all the parts of the Mass, the introit, the collect, the various readings, the gospel reading, the credo, which begins here. Prayer at communion, the prayer for after communion. So this presence of the Mass of the for the Virgin, this just sort of demonstrates that these books presumably were brought to church so that users could follow along with the Mass.
One get closer up of the text.
Oh gosh, okay, certainly. Okay, we can do that.
And there's also a question about the text of the Mass. Was the Mass standardized, or were there regional variations?
Gosh, oh, that's a good question. There were regional variations, certainly. I am not up on the liturgy well enough to know what those are in particular instances. But there was a lot of variation. Well, certainly not variation in the canon of the Mass, like the central part of the Mass, but in the selection of readings. Of course, those changed on a daily and weekly basis based on the liturgical calendar, and different regions have different uses, different variations in the readings at Mass, certainly. And that's a whole kind of area of study. But this is a very simplified Mass. It's not really clear to me how this would have tracked with what was recited in church and how useful it would have been to have this to follow along with. But in any case, it's relatively uncommon to find this in a Book of Hours, because the Book of Hours usually has the office or an abbreviated version of the office for personal use, right? That's the main purpose of the Book of Hours. But this one being very compact, one could imagine it would be pretty easy to for someone to bring with them to church.
So, someone is interested, very briefly, let us know if there is any vernacular writings.
Oh, I will let you know. I will let you know. And the other thing to note is that here at the end of the Mass, for the Virgin, we have kind of tacked on the 4 gospel readings, which, as I mentioned before, normally come towards the beginning of the book. I'll zoom out slightly. Yes.
I think Leslie has got
Of the text. Okay. It's a very small book, as you can see, right? So that accounts for a little bit of the graininess in the images. But this should be digitized, I think, well, perhaps not until the summer or spring, but we'll have wonderful images of it. And it is a very, very beautiful book. It's complete and it's in good shape. Of course, often books of hours have had miniatures or initials cut out, so we're lucky that this one is complete. So we've got the 4 short readings from the Gospels, the 4 Gospels here, and then we get to the Hours of the Virgin, and you can see through again this full page miniature, which is tipped in, which is on a separate piece of parchment. Of course, there's the added benefit here, not just of maybe making production or subdivision of labor a little easier, but the added benefit of not having the text show through on the image side, although the image, as you can see here, shows through. And so for the Hours of the Virgin, we have the typical iconography. We have a very nice Annunciation, and I'm going to actually carefully bring this a little closer to the camera. That might work. It is a little bit blurry, but you can see that this Annunciation is happening in a domestic interior setting. There's a bed, and in the middle of the upper part of the bed here, you have the dove of the Holy Spirit with a kind of sunburst. On the left, there's a lily. I don't know if you can see that growing, or a stem of a lily coming out of a vase. And there is a window with diagonal lozenges. That's leaded glass. And in the background, just to the right of the dove, posted onto kind of wooden wall, there's actually a little, it's not readable, but a little text, a little placard with red corners, very tiny details. But those little red corners, I think, represent wax that's being used to kind of post up this plaque of text. And you can see there's a door ajar in the background, and then on the right there's a fireplace with a candle. That little thing at the top of the fireplace opening is a little wax candle that's been smushed onto the mantle. That's what they apparently used to do. You could just
wax.
and you just stick it to the wall, and it's casting a little shadow. And then in the foreground, of course, you've got the angel Gabriel.
And she's got a book.
The Virgin has a nice book there on this little prie-dieu in front of her. So a lot of detail in this little image. And of course, this is kind of inspired by those famous oil painters like Jan van Eyck and Hans Memling.
So there's a chat asking about saying the pages of the manuscript seem extremely well preserved. Were the pages trimmed down when it was rebound, or was this book used either little or extremely gently in its first place?
I think that it kind of all of the above. I mean, I think it has been trimmed a little bit, and that was often done to clean up the edges, or if you wanted your books, maybe in the 18th century owner wanted them to fit in a special bookcase, or be the same size as other printed books they owned, there would be some trimming. So I think, but there is a bit of damage. I don't know if you can see, but like the angel Gabriel's robe is all rubbed out here in front. So there are little bits of damage, but it is in pretty nice condition, which is lovely.
Maybe it's asking if the in front of her.
Yes, she did. Yeah, and a very similar setup, which is really interesting. So you have a little bit of a through line, which is interesting too.
And in the chat, Claire has put in a link to an Annunciation triptych by the workshop of Robert Kempton. So if you want to see another version of that.
There we go. Yes. Yeah.
And Barry is also reading a book.
Yes. Well, so you have this dialogue with, which is really interesting, with sort of well-known oil painting, so on panels. Now, here, unlike many books of hours that have miniatures, that have an illustrated cycle for the hours of the Virgin, here we have historiated initials as opposed to full-page miniatures for the remaining 7 sections of the hours of the Virgin. And I hope you can see, it's going to be tricky to see from the overhead camera, but these are certainly by a different artist, as I said before. So somebody was working maybe more directly with the workshop who produced the text and the border decoration, and then came in and did these historiated initials that are a little bit more simplified and less maybe ambitious than those full-page miniatures, which must have been farmed out to a different artist, a miniaturist. And probably there are people who specialize in Netherlandish illumination. I wonder if not the name or the master who produced those images, it could probably be narrowed down to a creator more carefully or more closely. Again, since this is a new acquisition, there's still lots of research to be done. And so here we have lauds. We'll have miniature or historiated initials for each of the following hours of the hours of the Virgin. And I'm not necessarily explaining all of these sections because we don't have a lot of time, and this book has a lot of lovely images. But you can see the general layout here that contrasts with those page openings. Here's notes. So that's the hours of the Virgin. I skipped a few of those historiated initials because I want to show you all, make sure I show you all the miniatures. Then we have a set of prayers and suffrages that in a French book of hours, you would probably find at the end of the volume. But here we have a prayer of ascribed to ascribed to St. Gregory the Great. And so we have this image of the Mass of St. Gregory, this vision of Christ coming out of the tomb with the cross behind it. And these are instruments of martyrdom around. So there's a tomb, and then there's his tunic that's kind of coming out of the tomb. And then in the background, the cross and column with a rooster on top, right? This is the rooster that crowed 3 times when Peter denied Christ. In the ladder, sometimes you have more of the instruments, like the nails of the cross and the hammer and the saw that made the cross and all this other stuff. Here you have a kind of abbreviated version in it, but then you have this kind of interesting and unusual band of faces here, and they're painted in a kind of very loose gold, and they're those who kind of mock Christ, and one of them is kind of spitting. That's sort of an unusual detail. No, and then they appear in this kind of light gold sort of arc. Unusual. And again, the pretty much matching borders that show that these, even though the artist who made the scenes might have been working more independently, that these pages, these single pages, are conceived in the same workshop. Now, we have then a few folios later, 98B. We have the penitential psalms. And so these are the 7 penitential psalms that we find in many books of hours, and a really nice image here of the repentant King David. And I hope you can see, so here's God kind of in the corner. And there's this nice sort of cityscape with a moat here, and there's 2 swans and a boat that's sort of reflecting in the water, and this kind of wall, very finely painted, really nice. And so we have that section all the way to where we have the office of the dead. And so as we normally find, we have the penitential psalms, the litany, which is composed of these names of saints. Whoops. Oh, the lights are we're so transfixed that we haven't moved enough to keep the automatic lights in this room. There we go. But that's a good illustration of the gold that is commonly used, to highlight the initials for the litany here. And we have some additional prayer. And then we have this section, again, with a full-page miniature, the office of the dead, where we have a scene of the raising of Lazarus, which is one of several different iconographies you can find in this for the office of the dead. Right? So this is an office for the souls of the deceased. And you have another interesting image here with lots of detail. And those are I've shown you then the 6 full-page miniatures. But what I also wanted to show you were some of the additional, where are they? Additional smaller miniatures, and maybe here, right. So then we have, after the Office of the Dead, we have the 2 Marian prayers that we often find in books of hours. Oh, yes, sorry. There we go. And again, these are historiated initials, right? They're not full-page miniatures, so they're by that perhaps slightly less ambitious artist. And so we have the Lamentation here for the Obsecro Te prayer. And then we have the O Intimorata prayer here, which is often those 2 prayers are often connected to or found next to each other, but there's no miniature. But I did want to show you, because I feel I've missed them. Yes, some more in our last few minutes, in our last minute or so, the single miniatures. There's one. So this is where we have the suffrages. So this is John the Baptist, Peter and Paul, Saint Sebastian. And so these occur in sort of rapid succession because the suffrages are these short prayers to individual saints. And so they create this part of the Book of Hours that's very rich, because each of these historiated initials is kind of connected to a 3-sided border. So it creates this effect of having these successive page openings. So that's MS Codex 2324 that will be digitized in the nearish future. And we've got some questions. Okay, not a problem. We don't know who the patron was, because there's no sort of coats of arms or obits or birth notices in the calendar, but we do have some early provenance in the form of this. This is the last thing I'll show you, which is a cut out piece of parchment that we can assume was saved from the older binding when the book was rebound in the 18th century. They sometimes did this to save any sort of information that they thought was interesting or important. And this mentions a person named Eberhard von Dienheim, who lived later. He lived from 1540 to 1610, and he was the bishop of Speyer, which is an important city in the Holy Roman Empire in the Rhineland. And we have to sort of assume that this is correct, this information, and that this was attached to this book, to the earlier binding. But it gives us the name of this bishop who appears to have owned this book, approximately 100 years after it was produced. So we don't know how it came into his possession, and then where it went. After that, the next bit of provenance we have is from an Irish collector named Joseph Bennett, born 1834, he died in the early 20th century, who lived near Cork in a kind of big kind of castle-like building and had a few other books of ours in his possession. So we know that it belonged to him, and then is in various auctions in the 20th century. So there are some gaps in the provenance, particularly in the we don't know about the earliest owners.
Thank you.
All right,
That's great.
I think we are done. And if there are, I think there's lots in the chat, but we didn't get to every single question, but we can of course answer them by, you can follow up by email, and feel free to reach out, and do keep an eye out for the digital images, which will be forthcoming. So thank you all.